Remax Metro, welcome to another episode of Metro Minutes with Marcus, episode number 37. Happy Monday to you. I hope you had a lovely weekend. The topic of this episode of Metro Minutes with Marcus is actually a follow-up from last week's AI Revisited. After sitting back and taking a look at the replay and talking to a couple of agents and Rick, one thing I did realize is I talk too much. So when it comes to this type of information, it can be information overload. So what I've decided to do is to break up the topic that I discussed last week on the Metro AI Revisited, and I'm going to break it up into bite-sized morsels that you can take, practice that tip, and then rotate to something else. Okay, so we're going to focus on just one tip today, and I'm going to give you a nice example to use that tip in order to solidify it for you. Okay, so we're going to jump right into this today. I've got some great tools and resources I'm going to share with you as well, but let's jump right into it here. So what we're going to talk about today, and I bring up the slides here, we're going to jump into the slides that I had initially created for the presentation, and I'm going to share all this information with you. So don't be worried. So we're going to talk about 7 habits of the top 1% of AI users, okay? And we're going to skip over topic number 1, and we're going to go to tip number 2, which is context is everything. This is important on pretty much all aspects of life, but context when using AI is a very, very important part of learning how to use AI efficiently. Now, we've always talked about prompts and prompt engineering. I had a couple conversations with some people last week, and their thought was, "Oh, I'm really good at prompting." And I don't know, guys. I've spent a lot of times, hours and hours, and podcasts and reading books and taking courses, and I'm still figuring out how to really dial myself into writing a really good prompt. But one thing that's changed over the past several months when it comes to using AI is, yes, the prompt is important, and it's very important you understand the structuring of a prompt. But what's really more important is context. There's actually a new division that's actually been working its way through the AI world called context engineering, because the context is more important than the prompt at times. And I'm going to explain that to you. So on this slide here, AI needs to know the full story to be smart, okay? You can't just give it a one-liner and expect it to give you this amazing output, all right? So it's back to the garbage in, garbage out situation. So yes, you can give it like a one-liner like you use with Google, but the more context you give the AI, the better that output's going to be. And that's what we're trying to do here. We are trying to make sure that we get the most efficient and most dialed in and crispy output that we could possibly get from AI. And I'm going to show you some ways to do that. One way you can do that is to upload context and upload documents, or feed it a email thread, or give us a lot of history of a situation you're working with in a relationship, or whatever you can do to give it context, the better the output's going to be. So the way I have this visualized is having your prompt at the top here, and then you're going to have your context in the middle, and then you're going to follow up at the end of the context and give it a reminder of what that prompt was at the top. So for a visual, let's check this out. So here's the visual I came up with. So the very top of this screen you see here, I've got the prompt, right? So that's going to be giving it a role. So you are a top real estate agent. The next part, you're going to say, of course, something like your task is to blah, blah, blah. Then this is where the context examples come into play. All right. So you're going to upload documents, you're going to upload transcripts. Like I said before, the history of a past conversation that you've had before, giving it some robust history. Or maybe you want to grab an email thread because you've got a client who you want to respond to because of some type of an objection, and you want to give the AI some context to help you craft an email. So you want to just copy that email thread and post it right in. Or maybe you want to, for some reason, or maybe one of your kids wants to do a book report or do some of research, you can actually upload an entire book or a PDF for context, depending on which model you're using, whether it be ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini or whatever you're using. The context window matters. But in this scenario, we're just talking about what types of context you can add. So if I go to the next slide here, it's also important when you're talking about context is if you're just doing like a general query, like you're asking AI to help you with a, whether with a dinner reservation or a recommendation for dinner, maybe you don't have to give it quite as much context. But if you're doing things like writing or summarizing, or if you need the AI to give you advice, then it's always essential to make sure that you're giving it some context. When you're doing the giving the AI context, like I said before, you're going to have your prompt, then you're going to have all your context in the middle. And then what happens is if you give it too much context, there's a concept called lost in the middle. The AI kind of gets lost in your instructions if you give it too much context. So it's always great to come back at the bottom of your prompt slash context sandwich and remind it of what the task is, and maybe give it some constraints, things not to do. Don't give me a list, or don't give me bullet points, or don't give me emojis, or don't give me M dashes, or whatever it may be. Just a kind of a reminder at the end before you enter the prompt to give you the output. Okay. And always be very selective. So what that means is make sure when you're giving context, that you are pretty selective. For instance, if I was giving it an entire book because but I only wanted to summarize chapters 2 and 3, I would say that I would be very selective. Hey, here's a whole book, but I just want you to focus on chapters 2 and 3 and give me a summary. So that's what being selective means. All right. So if we go to this next slide, I'll bring this concept all home to you. So once again, we're going to go back to the very beginning of this where you have a prompt. So that's saying, hey, you are a amazing home interior designer. Please, your task is to blah, blah, blah. So you're giving it some type of a role, then you're giving it its task. And then what you're doing is you're giving some type of context so that it can know exactly which output it needs to give you. Okay. And then once again, depending on how much context you give it, then you want to go back and maybe redefine that role, and then and kind of remind what the task was. And then if you have any type of constraints or things you do not want it to do, then you want to go ahead and tell it that, and then you press enter and it will give you the output. Okay. So in order to give you a visual of what this all means, I'm going to give you a practical exercise that you can use. And I'm going to use what are called buyer personas. We've talked about them, probably going back maybe 2 years or so now. We've done a lot of training in those. Some of you have sat down with, and I was showing you how to do a buyer persona and what the importance of them are, especially in a listing situation. So I want to clear that up a little bit, give you another look at why you should be doing buyer personas for every listing appointment. You really should. And I'm going to give you what that even looks like. Okay. So let's jump into, well, first thing I did was I created a folder of all of the assets that I created for the last training, and I put them into a folder, and the folder is called AI Revisited Assets. And in that folder, I have all of these documents. So I'll make sure to link that up into the bottom of this description. So you'll have a link that takes you right to this Google Drive folder, and all of these assets are in there. The first of one that I want you to look at is, I believe, called examples of buyer persona instructions. So this gives you an overview of what the heck a buyer persona even is. Okay. When creating a buyer persona is a game changer for listing appointments. All right. So what's a buyer persona? A buyer persona is a detailed semi-fictional representation of your ideal buyer for a specific listing. It's not just about age and income. It's a rich profile that captures demographics, your age, job, income, stage of life, lifestyle, like hobbies and values and routines, housing needs, their must-haves, their nice-haves, mindset and motivation. Why are they buying? What excites them and what worries them? Decision-making factors. What are their influencers? What are their research habits? What are their deal breakers? Think of this as a reverse engineering the perfect buyer to make your listing value crystal clear to the seller and attract the right buyer faster. Okay. Here's a couple of use cases for buyer persona, which we talked about, of course. Listing appointments. Use your persona to show the seller you understand the property's ideal buyer and how you will reach out to that buyer. A lot of times we go into listing appointments and you may have done your research, you may have done your CMA, and as we know, we wear multiple hats as agents in this industry. Okay. So you're a research specialist, you're a marketing specialist, you're a sales professional, you're a psychiatrist. Like there's so many hats you wear throughout your role shifting as an agent, one of the things that we're marketers at the heart. So we need to know how to have the best marketing strategy possible when speaking and selling ourselves for a listing. Okay. So when we're sitting in front of a seller, do we know who our buyer is? Have we done the research? Most agents probably haven't done a really good deep dive on who that actual buyer is. And they kind of just spray their listing all across the market, not really dialing in or speaking to one specific buyer, avatar, or persona. So that's the purpose of this. The marketing strategy, you can tailor ads, you can tailor your staging, you can tailor your language to speak directly to the most likely person to fall in love with the home. Okay. It's a competitive differentiator. Helps your listing stand out in a sea of generic marketing because you're speaking specifically to a specific persona. Objection handling. If you anticipate and neutralize any common buyer concerns before they arise, you're way ahead of it. Okay. So this is a reverse engineering of the perfect buyer to make that listing crystal clear. Okay. So here's some more benefits to the seller and how to present it to a seller. Okay. First off, is strategic targeting. I create a custom persona that represents the most likely buyer for your home, Mr. Seller. Everything from our photos to our ad copy is tailored to a specific buyer, which means more interest, faster showings, and stronger offers. The emotional hook. We're not just selling a house, we're selling a lifestyle. This persona tells us what they dream about. This lets us position your home as the answer to that dream. It reduces the days on market theoretically, right? Targeted marketing researches the right people faster. That keeps momentum high and reduces your time on market. And then lastly, stronger negotiation position. Knowing your buyer helps us anticipate the concerns and address them before they chip away at your asking price. Okay. So that is, in a nutshell, what a buyer persona is. I've also included in here probably a little bit more of a broader example of that. This is a HubSpot asset that really goes a little bit into more depth about what a persona is. Maybe you want to look at that, maybe you don't. I think the asset I came up with was pretty dialed in, but this is a little more information for you if you want to know a little bit more about buyer personas and getting really good at crafting them. Okay. So I accidentally jumped out of there. Let me jump back into that asset one more time because I want to refer back to it here in a little bit. So I'm going to show you how you are going to develop a buyer persona. Okay. The first thing, step number one, is research. You've got to research and have research ready for your buyer persona. So we're going to use an example property. Carolyn and Tina have just listed a gorgeous home in the St. Paul Euclid neighborhood. So I'm going to use that as an example. Now, this is obviously a listing that's active. If you were going to a listing appointment, then what you would do is you would either look up on a third party site if it was listed before, or you would do your research just like you would normally do when you're preparing for your listing appointment. So you can have information about the listing, right? So in this scenario, what I'm going to do is I went to realtor.com and I searched up this listing. I'm going to grab this domain, or sorry, this domain here and copy it. And then I'm going to go over to ChatGPT. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to listing property summary here from what I did before. And all I did was I went to my chat window and I typed in, "You are a top real estate professional. Please review the following listing and summarize the information." And I basically just pasted in that domain and I press enter, and it spat out, "Here's a polished summary of the listing at 934 21st Avenue North." So it gave me an overview. So everything that was on this page here, it basically took all of that and it summarized it into a nice, succinct, like little mini report about that listing. Okay. Now this is just one way you can get information about the listing. It can be on Zillow, it can be on Remax.com. It can be you do your own research through MLS. However you're deciding you want to get the information about the specific listing, is up to you. This is just one quick example of how you can get information about the actual listing itself. So once I have this information, all I'm doing is I can go down and I can go to the little box here and copy this information, go over somewhere like maybe a Google Docs and just paste that into a document. And then I'm going to download and save that as a context resource, which I'm going to show you how we're going to use that to build our buyer persona. Okay, so step number one, so it's not confusing, is that we need to gather information about the specific listing for your listing appointment. You can give any type of format that you want, but this is one simple example. I went to realtor.com. I went to ChatGPT. I asked ChatGPT to summarize the listing for me. I copy that and I put it into a simple document. And now I'm going to go and export that to a PDF and download that to use it for my buyer persona. All right. So it'll make more sense as we move forward. Okay. So that's step number one. Number two, what you want to do is you want to do some market research, right? So, let me get out of there. So you want to do some market research. What better way to do some market research than use the Altos report that we send out every single Monday? It hits your inbox every single Monday. Okay. If you don't know or you haven't seen it, it looks like this. It's coming from Rick. It's actually coming from Altos, but you'll see Rick Brown's name. That's coming from him. So usually it's going to be a St. Pete report. This specific listing, if I go to change my report here, this specific listing is in 33704 zip code. So I simply went into, if you go to the email and you click on change my report here, it'll pull up this screen, right? Sorry. If I go to St. Petersburg there, and then I can basically just simply type in a different zip code, which I did, and move my face out of the way there. I'm typing a zip code, which is 33704, boom, and then it's going to change the report. And now I've got a report specifically for 33704, right? So all I have to do here is go over to share and then download full reports. And then now I've got a nice real-time report. It's hot off the press, statistics for today of 33704 zip code. So now I'm going to download that as another resource that I'm going to use to build my buyer persona. All right. So far we've done information about the specific listing that we're going to go to the listing appointment about. We've done a general 33704 area code latest statistics for that specific market segment. Now what we want to do is, as we all know, 33704 has what? Eden Isle, Snell Isle, Old Northeast, Crescent Heights. There's multiple neighborhoods that encompass 33704, right? But we want to really dial it in to a specific neighborhood. We want to do St. Paul, Euclid, or Euclid, St. Paul. All right. So one method I highly recommend to do that is to use a tool called RPR. Okay. Some of you may have heard of RPR. Some of you may not. I really recommend that you get used and comfortable to using RPR. If you don't know what it is, go to narrpr.com. This is a service that you pay for with your NAR dues. So I would definitely use it. They're always updating this. It's a very, very robust source of information, and I use it on a regular basis. Okay. So if you've never logged in here before, I definitely would recommend you go over to the little drop-down box here and go to profile. And this will let you upload your most recent headshot, a logo. If you want to update your logo, make sure all your information is correct on your profile. Your phone numbers are correct. You've got your email address in here correctly. If you have a website, make sure your website's in here. And then just go down with any updates and save it. And then your profile will be updated. Okay. So once that's done, let's get down to what we need to do while we're here. We're trying to dial in to the St. Paul or Euclid St. Paul neighborhood. All right. So I'm going to go over to this tab called reports. So under reports, I'm going to go to neighborhood report down here. Click on neighborhood report. All right. As you can see, I've already run this, but I wanted to make sure I knew the steps for you. But if I just start typing in Euclid, you see here, Euclid St. Paul comes up, right? So I click on Euclid St. Paul, and then I simply go down to make sure neighborhood reports clicked off. I have any type of information. This is going to be for my own personal use, but if I was sending this to someone, I could add my name, my photo, my work phone, email. You can decide how you want, because I can actually send this to a client if I wanted to. But in this case, we're just using it as a resource for our buyer persona. And then you simply just go to download. And then once it downloads, you're going to have something like this that gets produced. All right. It's going to have specifically that neighborhood is going to be the report. And then I'm going to have demographic information, housing information, It's so robust of all of the information about the specific neighborhood. Okay. Souls, just listed. Gonna have a lot to do with demographic information and education information. It just goes on and on and on. Okay. So once I have that report completed, I'm going to download that one as well. So to recap one more time, I pulled information about the specific listing for listing appointment. I went to Altos report and I ran a zip code report about the latest market trends and a specific zip code. And then I went a little bit further down to a hyper local situation of now I have neighborhood information. Okay. So I've got 3 documents that can be used as context as I'm creating my buyer persona. Okay. So now we're going to go back over to ChatGPT and I will show you this in action when you're using ChatGPT. So this was a buyer persona that I ran because I was trying to make it so I'm not spending a whole lot of time doing this while I have you on this Zoom call. But here's what I did here. I wrote a prompt, and here is the prompt, right? You're a top real estate agent and marketer. Your task is to create a detailed and robust buyer persona for the following property for an upcoming listing appointment. I posted in that link, even though I didn't need to, and I'll show you why in a second here. I'm also attaching demographic information, market statistics, as well as 2 examples of persona to follow for formatting purposes. Please provide a robust buyer persona for this address in the Euclid St. Paul neighborhood. So I've got my prompt at the very top. And then if you look, this is all my context right here. So remember, if we go back to this slide over here, so we bring up this slide one more time so I can make sure I'm beating a dead horse, because God knows I'm really good at doing that. So here is where we had the examples of my actual defining the role or the task. And then I have my examples here, once again, for context. And then I think if we skipped over to this slide, I also have my examples, and then I redefine what the role is one more time. So if I pop back over here one more time, this is going to be the information that I uploaded about the specific listing. So it was this document here, which gives me just the highlights and overview of the listing itself. That was the first thing that I loaded. All right. And the way you load something is if I go back down here to the bottom, because I've already ran this, is you go to this little plus right here. And this is how you upload files. You go like that and you just grab your file that uploads right to the chat. Okay. So once again, I come right down here, I go to upload files, and that's how I'm uploading that document for context to the chat. All right. So I've added the neighborhood. Well, first off, the listing, the first thing I added. And then the second thing I added was the Altos report, which I ran. Then the third thing I added was the neighborhood report, which I ran on RPR. Okay. And then if you look at this, I added 2 more things. I added 2 examples of what a persona is. And the reason why I did that is because instead of me having to explain to the AI how I want this formatted, I gave it examples of prior personas I've done so it can just format it based upon those examples. The good news is I've also included those inside of the drive that I gave you. I have 3 personas in here that you can use as examples. So if I give you, like, for instance, this is one that we put together for Chip. So the reason why I uploaded this to the AI is because I wanted to format it exactly the way this is formatted. So it's going to take all the information from the RPR. It's going to take all the information we got from Mulcher.com. It's going to take all the information we got from Altos, and it's going to create a fictional buyer persona based upon all of that information. All right. So it's going to use this as an example. And I didn't give it just one example. I gave it a second example and I also gave it one that was created for Jared also. So I also gave it another. So it's the same exact format. It's a different listing, but it's the same format. The more examples you can give for the format you want, the better. That way it gives you exactly what you want. Okay. So with all of that said, we're going to go back over here. And when I uploaded, I did my prompts. So once again, my prompts at the top, and then I've got my context here in the middle. And then I also finished by giving it the last little Please provide me a robust buyer persona for this address. I press enter. All right. And this is what ChatGPT gave me. Here is a fully developed buyer persona for 934 21st Avenue North, tailored for your upcoming listing appointment. This persona mirrors the format of your previous examples and integrates insights from property listing, from RPR report, and from the Altos report. So you see, it literally is mirroring exactly the format that I gave you with the examples. So if you want to try to practice and do a persona like this, please use the 3 examples I've shared with you in the folder if you want to use that format, and it will do the exact same formatting. So you don't have to do the formatting yourself or tell it how to format. It will use examples. Then it also is using my listing information that I provided. It's also using the RPR report and the Altos report. So that's context. So as I go into this is what it came out for the output. All right. So this is what the buyer persona looks like. So this is Jordan and Taylor Morgan. They're between 36 and 48. Jordan's the creative director and he works at a remote agency. Taylor's an executive chef or a co-owner of a local boutique restaurant. Household income between 225 and 275. It tells the stages of life. They have a dual income with no children currently, a rescue dog named Juniper, and an active social calendar. Current home status is they own a modern townhouse in Tampa Heights, love the vibe and hate the traffic, seeking to level up into a home with character and outdoor space in a neighborhood with charm and community. All right. So then he goes into what their housing needs are. A historic bungalow with upgraded systems and open flow for hosting. They're looking at their must-haves, which are 3 bedrooms. They want an entertaining backyard, updated kitchen, central HVAC, modern plumbing, electrical, and ample light, hardwood floors, and vanity touches. Nice to have detached garage, a corner lot for privacy, and walkability to cafes and dog parks. So he goes into what their hobbies could possibly be, what their core values are. Then he goes into their financial considerations, the price range they're looking at, their financing options, the market perspective. They see Euclid St. Paul as a hidden gem neighborhood that delivers old Northeast vibes without the $1 million price tags. Homes from 747 price point, it feels like a smart long-term investment, which is very true for that little nugget of a neighborhood in Euclid St. Paul. So this is some of their decision-making processes, some of their objections. This talks about their current pain point. They're tired of HOA restrictions in the current community they live in. They want to avoid fixer-uppers and homes needing a new roof or HVAC. And they're concentrated on a long-term walkability with the rising property taxes. Don't want to compromise aesthetics just to be near downtown. Okay. This next section really just has to do with marketing. It has to do with, things that are going to win them over, an emotional hook, a lifestyle sales pitch, a strategic positioning. So, and this is an example of a meta ad or a post for social media that you can use and to show your seller that you're already thinking about the way you would use this persona in order to craft marketing for this specific buyer. Okay. So I know that was a lot. If you need to go back and pause this and rewatch it again, please do. I've given you a lot to chew on, a lot to think about. So if we recap one more time, we want to make sure that the step number 1 you're going to do when building a buyer persona is you're going to identify the listing. So if this is a new listing or a listing that maybe it was expired, or maybe it's currently listed, or maybe hasn't been listed in a while, you can use a third-party site like, either Zillow or Realtor.com or Remax.com or whatever to go find information about that listing. And then all I did was take the domain and drop that into ChatGPT and say, give me a quick summary. I used that summary, pasted the output into a document and downloaded it as one context piece. And then I went to Altos and I did a zip code report by changing the zip code to the correct zip code. Then I ran the report, downloaded that as content piece number 2. And then I went to RPR, and we'll go through those steps again in case you forgot them already. I go to RPR, I go to reports, and then I go to neighborhood reports, and I simply type in the neighborhood and I run the report. And once the report's run, I download that report and I use that as a third piece of context for my prompts. And then over in ChatGPT, I came up with the prompt of, this is the top part of the prompt here. And then just for the sake of it, I went ahead and dropped that link to the realtor.com listing. Again, you don't have to do that because I already added the context right here for the listing. And then I told it what I'm attaching here. I'm attaching demographic information, market stats, as well as 2 examples of personas. And then I told it once again, reminding it what its task was. And I press enter. Now, once you have this report run, this is the last thing, we're going to wrap this up. Once you have this report run, what do you do with the next, Marcus? Well, you can do quite a few things with it. It's really up to you. I've created a template inside of Canva that I use to format these with, because maybe I want to remove the emojis. Maybe I want a little bit different formatting. So you can simply just copy this, and you could, just go right over to a Google Doc and, just get a new Google document and just paste this into a Google document if you wanted to. Or you can get fancy, like I'm a little fancy. So you can use that, and you can format it right here inside of, Google Drive, if you, or Google Sheets, or Google Docs, that is, so I can just format that here if I want. Or if I go over to my Canva, this is an example of a template that I created, and I simply can go in and clean this up inside of Canva. So I can paste each of the sections inside of Canva and format it this way instead. It's really up to you how you want to do that. If you need help on, how to get it to the next level once you have it produced, I'll be happy to help you create a template. Or if you want me to share this template or any other templates that I may have with you to make it easier for you, I'm happy to do that. And lastly, let me go one more time back over to this folder here. So I put examples. So like I said before, the chip buyer persona is in here under chip buyer persona. So you can use his as an example. If I go back one more time, I've got Jared in here as well as an example. So I believe it just says, hold on a second, refresh this one more time. All right, Carolyn's buyer persona examples in here. So maybe you want to use this one as an example, to see what that looks like. And then the last one that's in here is going to be Jared's. So that one's in here as well. They're all different properties. The branding's different on each one. As you can see, you want to personalize it to yourself, but feel free to use those as examples to format when you're using ChatGPT. And the last thing that I have in here, just let me show you what else is in this folder. This is some slides that are just some of the recent breakthroughs of the past 90 days. I'm a nerd, so I think that stuff's interesting from a high level perspective of AI. So I've got that slide deck in here. I've got the 7 habits of the top 1% of AI users. That's a full slide deck, but I'm going to break that down into multiple videos. So if you want to review it to get ahead, by all means, but I will be reviewing some of these topics as we move forward with the next Metro Minutes of Marcus. And then the last thing I have in here is just some tools that I use on a regular basis that I highly recommend that you check out. So I'm going to give you some more tips on how to use some of these tools moving forward. And then the last thing you probably want to know about is this is an overview of looking at the 3 buyer personas that I've shared with you. This gives you a nice snapshot of, of how to maybe explain this to a seller, and like what the power of this buyer persona strategy is. It definitely is something that will get you heads and shoulders above your competition. I would love to show you how to do this. I don't mind doing it for you at times, but showing you how to do this, not only do you learn the process of using AI and how it seems like it's a lot of work, but once you've done this a couple of times, you can do it relatively quickly. But the nuances that you learn when you're putting the buyer personas together will be very beneficial as you move forward with your listing presentation. All right. So that was a little bit long-winded, but I hope it was action-packed and not too much information. So please don't get overwhelmed. I just wanted to show you how to do a buyer persona. I really believe that those are going to be very beneficial to you in this competitive market that we're in to get you some more listings and making more money. All right. So hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to me. And as always, if you don't know, now you know. I look forward to talking to you guys soon. All right. Bye-bye.